So a lot of injuries, P. Obviously, this week was a bad week for injuries, and Tampa Bay on Monday night felt it the most, I think, out of
Mm.
any team. Man, we saw Mike Evans go down early in the game, and then for no reason for him to even be in the game outside of numbers, Chris Godwin obviously dislocated ankle. You hate to see it, man. This Tampa team was playing really well too. Like Baker was playing at an elite level. Both Mike Evans and Godwin were, pacing out really well, not just fantasy wise, but in real football as well. It's gonna be tough to, Godwin's out for the year and Mike's probably out a while. It's gonna be tough for this team to really replicate that.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was an exciting team. You know what I'm saying? Like Baker resurgence. You got the consistent Mike Evans, but this the Godwin thing, like that's tough, man. Because not only was he balling out, but it just the nature of how it happened. Like at the end of the game, it was garbage time, and I'm watching this and I see him just on the ground, like, and I'm like, because I didn't see the actual break, but I see him on the ground and I'm just like, I must have got the wind knocked out of him. Then you see Baker, like, damn it. I'm like, what's Baker so mad for? And I'm like, dang, bro. I go on Twitter and I watch what happened. That's tough because he was carrying a lot of fantasy teams. A lot of people traded for him. And it's all bad. You got me on that one, Jay. I call it, you got me on that one. All right.
I didn't get you. You asked for him. Dynasty probably was worse than it should have been, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's part of this shit though. That's part of fantasy is that we don't always know what's going to happen, and I think that's why there's a lot of people that love like, oh, I got this take right, and this off season I was right, and it's like we can't predict this shit, man. Like there's no predicting Chris Godwin who's having a breakout year goes and suffers a season ending injury. So you hate to see it, man. He seems like like one of the stand up dudes. Like you never hear about him like off the field or anything like that. You never hear anything bad about him teammate wise. Seems like he steps up there and does his job. So unfortunate to see him go out. And it's gonna be, it's gonna be a big hit for a lot of these fantasy teams, bro. Because not just him, Mike Evans. I mean, he re-aggravated his hamstring injury after catching his 100 touchdown pass. And it's like, man, that's another player who we're gonna have to try to replicate in a season where I've already talked about we've lost Brandon Ayuk, we've lost Debo Samuel. Like, I think what we can try to do is find options on this team, but we're never gonna find the option that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are. So we don't know how long Mike Evans is gonna be out, but we know Godwin's out for the year. At least on Tampa, I think we could find some easy targets to kind of look at. The first one for me is Jalen McMillan. Really looks like probably the guy that's going to step into this slot role. And it looks like he could have some good participation, was utilized in the passing game already. And we've seen him show flashes this year throughout the season. So I really like what he's probably going to do. And I think long term, he's the player that offers the most upside here. So I don't know how you feel about Jalen McMillan, man.
I like Jalen McMillan. I mean, ultimately, I do think that this team may make a play for a wide receiver via trade or something like that. Like they're one of the biggest candidates too. But if they don't, of the wide receivers that they have, because they got McMillan, they got Trey Palmer, and then they got
Sterling
Sterling
Shepard.
Shepard, right? So Sterling Shepard has the most experience, but look, but McMillan was the guy who, was highly touted coming out of the draft. He fell, right, primarily because he was hurt, but also, he played that slot role a lot, and teams are just might be looking for an X wide receiver, but he's going to fit, in my opinion, really well into that Godwin role. And on this team, that slot receiver does carry a lot of weight, specifically on how this team runs, right? Obviously, I think the main targets are going to probably go to Auden, right? And then they're probably going to get the running game going a lot more. You're probably going to see an uptick in Rashad White and his catches, so he may creep into the back end RB1 conversation. But as far as pass catchers go, the person who I would prioritize is McMillan.
That's interesting. I don't know if I'm with you on that, but the running back position is kind of thin. So Rashad White, a name who was probably discarded in a lot of leagues, trade, you could probably still get him for a decent price because a lot of people aren't expecting much. Everybody assumed Bucky Irving was going to take over the starting role. And this has become a three-headed monster. And he is the guy that offers a little bit more out of the pass catching, especially with Baker Mayfield, who does check down to the running backs a little bit more often than most quarterbacks do. And when I think about like Trey Palmer, this is a guy that seems to be probably the more inconsistent out of the two. but like Baker will sling the ball, man. So obviously, K. Dot, you talked about him having an increased role, but Trey Palmer didn't see a whole lot of targets in the game on Monday, but offers some like deeper league. I would say like 14, 16 man leagues. That's where I'd be looking to like start him at flex. I think he's worth the pickup right now in 12
Yeah.
team leagues just until we see it. But I think for me, McMillan probably steps in as like an every week wide receiver 3 or flex, just given the nature of the position right now. I don't think, I don't know how many mega games he has in him, but I think with the way the position is right now, you gotta find people to start at the receiver position. He feels like a wide receiver 3 flex in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely a safe floor guy. What you'd like to see is he's already caught touchdowns this year. And while Mike Evans was out, and I don't know if Godwin was out at this time, I think Godwin may have still been in, but he did get a red zone target, an end zone target, caught the rock, then fumbled it out of bounds or whatnot. So it wasn't a catch, but I mean, things like that you like to see. Things like that is what you want to look for.
The trust, right? Like Baker trusting.
Yeah, not only is Baker trusting him, but the team is incentivized. Like this is their 3rd round pick, right? I mean, he's crispy running routes. He works in the slot, like I mentioned before, but I think of the 3 wide receivers that we have to choose from on Tampa, I think he's just head and shoulders above the other 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is a guy like over you if you guys rewind the tape, I talked about some Bucks players this offseason. Jalen McMillan is a name I said, with the draft pedigree he has in this offense, there could be some opportunity. Unfortunately, it came at the expense of a couple of his teammates, but this is a player that I do think has, some fantasy appeal. And, you talked about K. Dotton real quick. This is a tight end who you might be able to find him on waivers in some leagues. You've been talking about him over the last couple of weeks as, a guy that's had some additional opportunity here. I mean, there's a world where we could put K. Dotton up here in like these top 12 tight ends moving forward.
Yeah.
You think he's there?
I think this would cement him. I mean, like, look, when we talk about top 12 tight ends, there's really like, it's such a there's not much variance between like tight end, I think 6 and like tight end like 15 right now. Like anybody with a big game, I'm sure that after last night he's probably already in the top 10. But I think now, just by the nature of it, because you have to assume Mike Evans is going to be out at least 4 weeks, just by what they were saying, re-aggravated the hamstring. But, they're making comments like, okay, he couldn't put his shoe on. He was in so much pain.
Damn.
So it's like, you hate to see it, but the one consistent piece that is there is K. Dotton, and you've seen them target K. Dotton a lot when these 2 guys went down. So yeah, to answer your question in short, I do think he is a top 12 tight end moving forward.
He's ranked right now as a top 12 tight end, and so obviously there's going to be a world of opportunity here for him, the most veteran player out of this entire receiving group. Well, obviously out of Sterling Shepard, but the most veteran out of like the Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan. Chris Godwin is a drop. Unfortunately, he's not coming back in Dynasty. I don't even know what it looks like in Dynasty because that'll be a tough hold given the fact that he's coming off a dislocated ankle. But for Mike Evans, it looks like he's probably at least going to miss the next 3 to 4 games. If you're a team that's under 500, I would probably be looking to move him, just depending on what happens over the trade deadline here, what happens with this team's record. They're still a winning football team, and the one thing about Mike Evans is that he's still incentivized to hit that 1,000-yard marker that he's trying to hit. So there's a potential that he could get back in the next 3 to 4 weeks and still have an opportunity that I wouldn't count out Mike Evans if you have him on your